Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the health chat at Nanavati Super Specialty Hospital. Today we have with us Dr. Manmohan Kamath. Hello, Dr. Kamath.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Dr. Kamath is head and senior consultant, general and minimally invasive surgery at Nanavati Super Specialty Hospital. He has a massive experience of over 30 years. He has done MBBS, MS, FAIS, and FIES. And he has been a veteran in the field of minimally invasive surgery at the hospital. With Dr. Kamath, today our topic of discussion is hernia and piles management. Dr. Kamath, to start with, let's discuss the hernia part first. If you can tell us what is exactly hernia and what causes it?
Hernias are actually divided into two aspects. One is called as the external hernias and the other one is called as the internal hernias. Now, external hernia is something which is basically visible. The people can see on their own body that something is projecting out. There is a small swelling somewhere in the body which is coming out of that. So that is called as a hernia. Internal hernia is a topic of investigations which will possibly tell you regarding internal herniation. So let us restrict this discussion because it's a vast topic to talk about internal hernia and external hernia together. So we will restrict our talk to external hernias. Now, what exactly is external hernias? Hernia in a Latin word is called as a tear in the body wall. So as you know that internal organs of our entire digestive system, our abdomen is containing into a box which is surrounded by the abdominal muscles. Now, if there is a tear anywhere due to whatever cause it may be, a small rent as it is caused into these muscles, what will happen is that the inside intestines start projecting out or they come out of that particular rent, and exactly this condition is called as a hernia. Now, it's very interesting to note that the human being is a wonderful machine where there are some openings which are already kept by God, when they created human. So these developmental openings which are there, they are supposed to be something like a safety valve. When you have a pressure cooker, imagine your pressure cooker, it has one safety valve. Always, every pressure cooker will come with a safety valve, and as and when the inside pressure inside the cooker will go beyond a certain levels which it cannot sustain, what gives way is the safety valve. If the safety valve would not have been there, you must have noticed that there is a blast which happens and the lid just flies away somewhere and causes a lot of injuries. So to prevent all those things, it is very important that one should have a safety valve, and exactly for the reason that in somewhere in the inguinal region, these safety valves type of things where the organs from the abdomen start going down into the pelvic region, called they are internal rings as you call them in a medical science, they are present. They can also get widened if the internal pressure inside the abdomen increases, and then it can just start widening and the contents of the abdomen such as intestine, omentum, ovaries in female, or these things can just descend down from there, and this particular condition is called as a groin or inguinal hernia. So basically hernias is something which is pertaining to the rent in the abdominal muscular wall, weakness which is present there, and there is a projection of the or pouting out of the inside contents from the abdomen.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. Sir, can you tell us what are the different kinds of hernia and in which body parts can it occur?
Yes. So, types of external hernias, as we classify them regarding the regions from where they are located into. One is that some of these hernias are present in the groin region, as I just told you. Now, groin can have hernias which are of three types. One is a inguinal hernia, which is again divided into two, called as a direct hernia and an indirect hernia. Then there is a femoral hernia, and then there is a obturator hernia. All these three, openings which are already present there in the body or in the pelvic region, and they can just enlarge. And once they are enlarged, they start, the contents of the abdomen can come and protrude out of that. That is called as a groin hernia, which is inguinal hernia, obturator hernia, femoral hernias. Second one is a umbilical hernia. The nevus which is there is a congenital defect which is there, and that defect is supposed to get closed or at birth. However, it's a potentially weak wall. So if there is a inside pressure increases to the greater extent, the muscles are weak due to some reason. Obesity can reduce, such type of weakness in this muscle. There is a tear which occurs at that particular point and called as an umbilical or a para-umbilical hernia. Third is called as a hernias from the incisions. So any incision in the body, for example, in the operation when the patient undergoes, it leaves behind somehow, due to whatever perioperative causes could be, it can leave behind a certain weakness in the closure of that abdominal wall. And that closure slowly widens and the herniation starts from there, and that is called as the incisional hernia. So any herniation in a abdominal wall which is anteriorly placed on your body can be called as a ventral hernias. One can have a lumbar hernias which are on the side. One can have a renal angle hernias which can be on the little posterior aspects. Or one can have even what is called as a congenital hernia. So at birth one can have hernia. Child can be born with a hernia, and these are common hernias where one can have what is called as a congenital inguinal hernias is one of the conditions which can be there. In the adult, we call them acquired hernia. In the children which are born with hernial defect, they are called as the congenital hernias. So these are the two major classifications which are there. So basically, depending on the location where the hernia is located, we name them as the hernia of a particular type.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. So, sir, is it easy to detect hernia? And, what are the most common symptoms that one has to look out for?
Yes, certainly. See, hernias, as we are talking about the external hernias which are visible, as I just mentioned to begin with. Now, visible hernias is something like swelling which is coming up in your groin, in your abdominal wall, or wherever. So, all these hernias, whenever there are swelling, patient notices, they consult a doctor. And on examination, it's a clinical diagnosis. Anyone can detect that patient is suffering from hernia. The easiest test to do in such case about whether there is a herniation is there or not there is to make the patient relax in a lying down position and then ask him or her to cough. So when one coughs, what happens is that the abdominal muscles contract, and inside the abdominal pressure due to coughing, it increases, and whatever the impulse is there that can be felt outside. So the swelling which is visible can give rise to something like a impulse on coughing. So when you cough, there is an impulse. You can feel a thrill. There is something which is projecting and hitting your hand, or one can even see it with your own eyes. So there is something which is coming up, and when you stop coughing, it goes in. Classical test for detecting external hernias. Internal hernias, such as hiatus hernias, which are basically associated with some of the reflux diseases. So acidity, retrosternal burning, the food which you take coming up back into the throat. These are the very classical signs of internal herniation called as a hiatus hernia. So very, very simple to detect, very easy. And on basic clinical examination, one will be able to, so the patient can see, themselves can experience, themselves can know that they are suffering from hernia. Some abnormal swelling arising in the body which disappears or reduces when the patient lies down merely due to gravity, and or otherwise these are the swellings which become prominent on coughing, and or staining. So they are hernias, easy to detect.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, doctor, now we would move on to the treatment part, and if you can tell us how is hernia treatment procedure, and is it surgical or merely interventional?
Hernia is one disease, which is totally dependent on closure of the defect. See, the defect which is a mechanical defect, no pathy, no medical pathy, whether it is any pathy, whatever claims have been made by the other pathies such as Ayurveda, homeopathy, Unani, or even allopathy for that matter, all these things they can never heal hernia. Hernia is a muscular defect which is there, which requires to be closed. And once you close this defect, then the chances of things projecting out or coming out of that defect go down. So as one can know that if there is a opening or a defect is in the wall, you have to close it. And once you close that, then the things will settle down, and they stop having these problems. So the question is about how can we close it, because there are different methods of closure. In the children, as I told you, congenital hernias, what do? You just close the defect. It's a congenital defect. There is no muscular wall weakness as such. So it's a congenitally inability of closure of the duct which is present at the congenital, at the time of birth, which is supposed to close, it doesn't close. So you close it. So a remaining little work which the God has forgotten to do, you finish it off. I think that's what you do by treatment of these congenital hernias. As against the acquired hernias or adult hernias, what is required to be done is the defect which is acquired now, so you have to close it, and you have to supportively put in a mesh. Mesh is a foreign material which is, it's like a net, what you put in a net there. And this net, what does it do? It induces the fibrosis. So it induces the tissue to grow, your own body tissue, which holds and makes it so tight that the herniation doesn't happen. So there is a crisscrossing which takes place of the fibers or your own tissues, and that incorporates this mesh in such a good manner that hernia doesn't recur after that. The initial methods for such type of repairs used to be always open method. They are still good methods. They are still been done. They are still being practiced. Mesh is the addition for about, say, another last about 3 to 4 decades, that it has become a norm that in all adult hernias we use in a mesh. What does a mesh do is that mesh, as I told you, strengthens this wall, and on top of that, additionally, that it gives one more benefit, that is called as a tension-free repair. So you don't pull the tissues and bring them together under tension, so that the patient has a lot of tug and pull till the healing takes place, and that is a tension on the tissues which is present there. It may rupture or give weakness in some other part of the body. So you have to prevent that. So what do is that you close this defect, you put in a mesh lies on top, tissues are at that own places, mesh covers it. So a tension free repair is what is achieved by mesh. So after the open method, slowly with the advent of further technological advancement about the laparoscopy and imaging studies which are there, we moved on to what is called the laparoscopic repair of these hernias. The benefit in such cases is that one can achieve such type of repair by use of a telescope and a small incisions of something like a 3 millimeter, 5 millimeter, which type of, so hardly they are visible. So the benefits are recovery is much faster, pain is comparatively very less, and the third, cosmetically, it's very much acceptable that one may not be able to make out that you got operated at some time or the other. So this is how it's supposed to work, and that's a benefit what one can get out of such minimal invasive surgical techniques. So it's an advent, it's a modern medical science gift to humankind, is that laparoscopic repair has helped us for early recovery and advancement in the management of hernias.
Correct. Thank you, sir. So you spoke about the minimally invasive approach for hernia management. So is it a daycare procedure at Nanavati Hospital, sir? And what is the recovery process like?
Yes, indeed. Every hernia can be managed in the daycare. The daycare means that I call the patient in the morning. Patient comes fasting, prepared. He is fully investigated. Prior, everything is planned. Elective surgical approach, which is done for such cases. And this patient can get admitted in the morning, and by evening, patient can go home. The procedure requires anesthesia. What type of anesthesia actually would depend on a couple of things. One is a patient factor. What is the patient fit to undergo? What type of anesthesia. Second, the type of procedure that is being chosen for him. For example, the hernias, inguinal hernias, or some of the hernias which we can do in an open way can be done under what is called as a regional anesthesia, where we can, or a spinal anesthesia, in which cases The only that part which is for a surgery get anesthetized, but with the other part always is patient is awake. You can talk to the patient while during surgery. But for a laparoscopic repair, it is always good to have anesthesia which is general anesthesia, because the chances of what is called the air going into the peritoneal cavity, or sometimes you put the air into the peritoneal cavity, can make patient little uncomfortable during the procedure. So a general anesthesia, so anesthesia fitness wise, patient preference wise, and the procedure will dictate about the type of anesthesia which can be offered to this patient. So the patient comes fasting in the morning, fully investigated, what procedure is to be done is planned beforehand, explained to the patient. And at Nanavati Super Speciality Hospital, we offer these patients that they can go home in the evening, and you know, in the evening meal they can have even with their own family members. So such type of benefit, if you have, you can go back to your own bed to sleep. I think no one can have seen. Always the recoveries are always better of these patients at home, but there are certain restrictions that they have to follow, and they get explained at the time or immediately after surgery about some of the restrictions which they will have to follow after in the post-operative period.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. And lastly, sir, to conclude, just wanted to know the risk factors. Are there any ways that people can prevent hernia?
Well, see, prevention of hernia is something which is, to some extent, one can prevent it by prevention of intra-abdominal increase in pressure. For example, if someone is having a chronic cough, so treatment of this cough early so that it doesn't increase the intra-abdominal pressure. If someone is, weightlifter or goes to the gym and starts lifting weight, what is important is that you have to give an external support with a binder to the abdomen when you are doing such type of exercises, so that you take care of not letting muscles getting exposed to a lot of pressure which is coming from within. Third is that the obesity. You should prevent your abdominal fat, because more the fat, it penetrates into the muscle and muscles become weak, more prone for hernia. Third. Fourth is that if you are straining at passing stools or maybe urine for whatever reasons, you should immediately consult a doctor, get it checked and get it treated at the earliest, because these are the two things which again can make the patient prone for hernia due to increased intra-abdominal pressure. There are certain other factors which are type of congenital or collagen deficiency factors which are there. These are the some of the factors, maybe old age at times. These are some factors which are beyond the control of a human being in spite of whatever measures you take. And these are the patients where hernia possibly cannot be prevented. But yes, I mean, there are certain definite norms which are there, which I just explained you, by which one can take precautions not to have hernia. Because having hernia is not a good thing, because only the surgery remains the option. And more thing is that if you know that you have a hernia, it's better to get operated, because complications of hernia can make you subject to in the emergency operation, which is anytime required to be prevented, because electively you have a choice of date, fitness, outcomes can be properly measured and could be good if elective surgery is done. If you get subjected to for an emergency operation such as intestines coming out and getting stuck there, you are vomiting, your tummy is full, you have a lot of pain, and then you go and get admitted and immediately subjected for a surgery. So the surgery which you are talking about, the daycare, can go to such a complication where you have to reset a part of intestine and join to each other. 7 days hospital stay is for fix, and plus 4 to 5 days no food. So why take such chances of complications? It's always better that you go and get it treated early and prevent any complications arising from hernia. So first, prevent hernia. If it happens, or if you notice or you are diagnosed with hernia, get operated soon. These are the only two messages one must keep in mind when you are dealing with hernia.
Very well said, sir. Very well said. Now we'll move on to some of the questions which have come from our viewers.
Yes, yes.
So Ayonija Das is asking, what precautions should I take during the recovery period post hernia surgery?
Well, post hernia surgery, as you know, that tissues which are being repaired and with a mesh which has been added support for hernia, it's always good that you take care not to expose them to stress. by what I mean by stress is again prevention of any increase in the intra-abdominal pressure. So getting up is a technique that you go on the side and get up. Don't get up upright so that the muscles are not under pressure. Don't lift any heavy weights. Any chronic cough at all, if at all it is there, take some syrups, cough syrups or whatever available treatment your doctor tells you so as to prevent it. So take care for at least about 6 to 8 weeks minimum to prevent and take care of such type of precautions are to be taken. And if you take them, the recurrences of this hernia are not there or you will not encounter them.
That's great, doctor. Thank you. So, Mr. Ganesh Rane was asking what are the treatment options for inguinal hernia surgery?
Treatment options, yes. See, Mr. Ganesh, the treatment options for inguinal hernia, as I just mentioned, one can have open surgery, one can have laparoscopic surgery. I think these are the only two options what we have available today. And laparoscopically, as I just explained, the small incisions, the same surgery is being carried out. Only thing is that the placement of the mesh is at a different plane. So it gives you a more physiological, as we call it, a repair of placement of that mesh by this particular method with the laparoscopic, as against the open method. With the open method, the treatment is the mesh is placed on the upper side, so the chances where the precautions are to be taken for a little longer time, about 3 months or maybe little more.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, Namita Das is asking how long does a hernia operation take?
That depends on how big is the hernia. Second is who's your surgeon. And the third thing is that what is the type of repair that is being offered for this hernia. So these are the couple of factors. So it is very difficult to say how long will it take. Any hernia operation can take from half an hour to 3.5 to 4 hours or maybe beyond that as well. It depends on the type of hernia, the complication associated with that, whether it is a recurred hernia, how obese you are, whether we are doing it laparoscopically, whether we are doing it open. So many factors which are affecting all that. Mrs. Das, I am sorry that I can't give you one standard answer for this. It will all depend if you come and, or rather, the patient comes and consults the doctor and gets the idea about, this answer can, this possibly this question can be answered that time itself.
Right. Sir, Kashish Singh Dev is asking is surgical mesh for hernia safe?
Yeah. It is very safe. It is an inert mesh. It is not supposed to cause any reaction or anything of that kind. These meshes are very safe. They have been time tested. More than 3 decades we have been using them without much of a problems or any problems per se. So these meshes are safe. Definitely they are safe. Yes, and we have different types of meshes also available.
Correct. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the next segment about the piles management.
Certainly.
Yeah. So, sir, if you could tell us a little about what exactly is piles and what causes it.
Well, piles is it's a layman's term called as the piles. In medical language, we call them hemorrhoids. Now, this piles is nothing else but these are the basically dilated veins which are present near your anal end, where you pass stools from that end. When there are dilated vessels or veins which are seen, they are called as the piles. To tell you very briefly, you must have noticed something called as the varicose veins. A lot of people have it on their lower legs about the dilated veins which are visible there. So these are the same type of veins, but only thing is the location is different, which is inside or rather, in at the different site, and these are called as the piles.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. Also, are there any particular risk factors associated with piles?
The second part of this particular question was about the piles, the cause of the piles.
Causes, yes,
was the question.
yes.
So, what causes piles is piles we divide them into primary piles and secondary piles. So, it's a primary hemorrhoids. Now, these primary hemorrhoids there is no reason per se what we find it. You see, but the secondary hemorrhoids which we see are the hemorrhoids which are due to some certain cause. For example, they can be physiological or pathological causes which are there. Now, many times when I say that we don't know what causes piles, remember that these piles is caused due to straining at stools. One, that someone has a tendency to sit on a toilet seat for a long to pass stools. the stool doesn't come, so you strain, and that becomes a part and parcel of your life. You don't consider it to be abnormal because that becomes a natural method for you. But when you keep straining, the vessels there keep dilating because you are exerting a pressure on this particular part, and then these veins dilate, and they are called as the piles which are there. So straining at stools, hard stools, constipation are some of the common causes where the piles get caused, and we really cannot figure out that what exactly could be the cause. However, in case of secondary piles, something like a physiological piles, for that matter, a pregnant lady, let's consider a pregnant lady. What happens is that there is a uterus, there is a child in a womb, and that particular womb causes a pressure on those vessels which are going down there, and these vessels which are traveling down there, they get blocked temporarily to some extent, and the pressure in the vein increases, and that results into secondary piles. When the pregnancy is term, when the delivery takes place, slowly this gets regressed, so they are self what you call the self recovery which happens in such type of piles which is there. As against, there are certain other causes such as maybe large ovarian tumor, there are cancers, there are fluid in the abdomen, there are tumors which are located somewhere. This can result also into the pressure onto these veins. But these are pathological ones. These piles don't regress back because the condition keeps on recurring, and even if you operate on that, the piles have a tendency to remain. So this is one thing that one must remember. It's always been talked about is that generally, the animals don't develop piles. Why? Because they walk on the 4 feet. The human, which is evolved from a 4 feet to 2 feet, and acquired this upright posture, and this particular condition of piles is basically a punishment for your upright posture. I'm not telling you to walk on the 4 limbs again.
Yes, sir, definitely. And so next part of the question was the risk factors associated with
Yes,
piles.
piles is something which is associated with the risk, and frankly speaking, the risk when are the complications which are caused due to piles, and that is why the patients keep come and meet doctors. So, what are the risks? One is that there is a swelling which appears in near the anal end. One. Second thing is that there is a discomfort which patient experiences while passing stools, especially after a spicy meal a day before. So when you pass those spices in your stools, they irritate that mucosa of enlarged veins which are there, gives a burning sensation there. Third is that the hard stools passing there can cause a tear, and there could be a bleeding from these piles. The blood, we have seen the patients coming with a hemoglobin of 3, 4 going to that low anemia just because of the bleeding from piles. Then there is a complication such as the patients can experience the piles which prolapse out, and they get engorged, and the patient comes with a severe pain and a large swelling remaining there. Fourth is that these piles which are engorged or prolapsing out can result into gangrene or thrombosis there. So this is a complication which is a very deadly complication, can result into septicemia, and patient can even land up with some fatal complications resulting from that. So this is something which should never be taken lightly, and they should be immediately attended, and should be treatment should be started. So these are some of the complications. However, just merely due to piles, one can experience little discomfort, swelling in that region, and third is a little wetness with recurrent infections, mainly fungal, in that region, in and around the anal region. Some type of itching one can experience in that region. So these are some of the low complications, as we call them. But yes, unless and until complication comes, patients don't turn to doctor to get identified about the condition of piles.
Correct. Thank you, sir. So, is there any difference between internal and external piles? If you can
Yes,
tell
yes.
us.
These conditions are different. These conditions are different in a way that external piles are visible. They are external, as the name indicates itself. These piles can be felt, they can be seen. Just with a visual examination, one can see these piles and identify and examine them. As against the internal piles require what is called as a proctoscopic examination. So you have to insert a scope, and that is only with the help of a surgeons or a trained people who can identify, trained doctors who can identify these conditions. with the use of scope. So internal piles require examination in detail as against external piles which can be visible or occasionally can be felt.
Right, exactly, sir. So that is why, if you could tell us more about how the diagnosis for piles is carried out.
Now, as we were just talking some time back regarding the hernia diagnosis, where patient looks at their own swelling, identifies it, and comes for a swelling. But piles is something, a place itself is very difficult to examine. So it's very difficult for someone to see and diagnose their own piles. So occasionally, what the condition is better to consult an expert to identify the type of condition. Because today, as you know, that any, as I just explained you about the symptoms, right from a slight itch in that region to a bleeding or a piles or maybe something called as a fissure or maybe fistula. All these conditions are perianal conditions which are difficult to see. And anything in and around that region, first condition what the patient comes out, he says that I have piles. Common name which is very very popularly known to people. So any condition they feel, including from slightly itching to cancer, they will say that I am suffering from piles. That is not the truth. So therefore, to identify the truth, to identify what exactly is the problem, one must get examined for the condition what you are suffering in that region, because there are different conditions. Today we are talking about one condition called as the piles, but it is not the only condition, though it is a common condition. There are multiple other conditions which are common. Some of them are less common, but some of them are again common, as I told you, fissure, fistulas. All those things are comparatively pretty common, fungal infections in that region. So these conditions can be identified with examination and they can be differentiated from piles. Otherwise, blindly saying that I have a problem and I have a piles, there is a, because the advertisements also keep coming in the local paper and some media, and you start thinking that I have piles. So you make a phone call, send me the medicine for the piles. You don't have piles. Why are you taking medicine for the piles? You have to identify the problem first and then take a treatment. So that's what is the crux of the story.
Right, right. Thanks a lot, sir. So you mentioned a lot of other complications which are similar, which have similar symptoms to piles, or people, misunderstand them as piles. But are there any complications associated with piles, which piles can develop into or get they come to you along with piles?
Yes, yes. See, there are patients, who have piles, whether they are internal, externals. You see, the patients, little elderly, maybe I would say, with a change in their bowel habits and develop piles. Suppose, for example, let me tell you the example of a couple of these patients whom I had seen last month itself. Out of the patients of the piles which I had seen this last month, two patients which are strikingly come in front of me, both of them had come for bleeding from the anal region and they had piles. They were diagnosed with piles. They were treated by some of the, for whatever the treatment of Ayurvedic treatment or other type of treatment for piles. Everything was okay, but they had associated problem of a cancer of the rectum which went unidentified in such cases. So, as I just mentioning you, cancer higher up into this bowel intestine can give rise to these secondary piles. These are the pathological piles. So, the piles which are suddenly developed in an individual which is little elderly age group, a change in their bowel habits, subject them for some examination, some kind of examination, especially a condition called as a sigmoidoscopy or internal examination, the colonoscopy, or maybe some radio imaging studies of CT scan or anything of that kind, which will detect if there is any condition higher up, so that you don't treat the piles and leave behind the primary cause which caused the pile. So this should not happen. So better to get investigated thoroughly so that you identify these patients who have a problem about the pathological conditions which are there, so that they can be treated along with this treatment of such type of piles. So piles can be have associated complaints. Occasionally, there are peri-anal region conditions such as fissure in ano, which could be associated with the piles. So both these conditions, they are in the same region. However, fissures are very painful, and they can then again, as the piles cause bleeding, fissures cause bleeding, So that symptom remains the same. Patient thinks that they have pile, they keep taking treatment, the fissure remains there, and painful defecation continues with the hard stools. So fissure is a different condition, though it's in the same region. So they have to be identified and treated in a different way and a different manner. So examination is mandatory there. So associated this type of complaints of cancer, a fissure, or maybe occasionally fistulas, and such type of common complications associated with that or problems which are associated with that can come into visibility only on investigation. So that's very important.
Right. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, can you tell us now about the treatment part and how do we treat piles here at Nanavati Super
Now,
Specialty?
treatment part wise, piles we divide them into different categories. One is from 1 to 5 are the different grades in which the piles complication wise they are divided into. In a grade 1 piles, they can be treated with a little modification in the lifestyle, high fiber diet, stool softeners, easier motion, so no staining at stool. So these are the things which are useful for piles treatment part of it. Little modification in lifestyle changes, as we call it, as against some of the uh, the other complicated piles or higher grade piles require a treatment modality. We have a battery of treatment modalities available. The gold standard treatment for piles is what is called as a ligation and excision of piles. Under anesthesia, piles are identified and they have been removed and they are ligated at the base from where they begin. So this treatment is a gold standard treatment, but there are a lot of new things which have come up into piles management. There is something called as a stapler hemorrhoidectomy. Now here you use a stapler to ligate those vessels up there and remove some of the part of that veins which are dilated and coming down. So they pull you up and all those piles start shrinking after the stapler hemorrhoidectomy. So that is one good and hardly any pain associated with which is present in your open surgery. Another option is a laser hemorrhoidectomy. Laser hemorrhoidectomy are two types. One is that endovascular laser. So you put in a laser inside the the piles and the pile mass starts shrinking. Or with a laser you excise the particular part or the piles which is there. So these are the different options which are there as about the laser. The third one is called as a banding. You can use the bands to block the piles which are there. Then we have what is called the injection sclerotherapy for a basic pile, small piles which are bleeding. You can inject a sclerosant agent there, or infrared light which can be applied there, which can coagulate this bleeder. So that is the different modalities which are using depending on the grade of the pile, choice of the patient after explaining them what are the options, what they can avail depending on that, and obviously the cost involved because the cost changes with all these type of different treatments which you offer. So whatever is acceptable, whatever is standard, whatever is applicable to, give them all the choices and let them choose what they want regarding this type of treatment for piles.
Right, sir. Thanks a lot. So we'll take some of the questions for piles which
Yes,
we have
yes,
received from our viewers.
sure.
So Mr. Rahul Sharma is asking, is there any medicine which is the best, considered the best for piles?
Well, see, remember that once the piles are there, they only thing is that what you can do with the medicine is that you don't let them worsen. How do you do that? By doing a easy passage of the stool where one can pass stool without staining. One. Second, you can have locally applied some of the ointments and jellies which are there, which can make the skin a little stronger so that it doesn't bleed and then can cause a little shrinkage of the piles. So the complications will can get prevented by usage of such type of modality of treatment. And the other modalities which are there, there are a lot of preparations which are available in the other patches, but all of them get concentrated towards not subjecting the piles to complications or prevent them by easy passage of stools, which is a major cause which is there. Otherwise, the available treatments don't cause cure in the piles per se, medical management. they remain there, but they don't worsen. I think they don't get into the complication, and that is what we worry about. So I think that takes care. I think that is the medicine which is available in the today's world.
Right. Thank you, sir. Ms. Priya Singh is asking a very important question. Are there any food items to avoid in piles?
Uh, yes, the advice is about the two aspects. One is what to avoid, and second is what to eat. Because those two things are very important, isn't it? I tell you what not to eat, but then I have to also tell you what is beneficial for your, in case the piles are there, to how to manage them. So, answering your question about what not to eat. Now, there are certain type of food items which cause, you know, constipation. You see, I mean, some of the patients can get constipated due to some of the food item. Not that everyone can be, having that food and getting it. For example, occasionally the people have a non-vegetarian food which can induce complications, constipation. Second is that drinking, the less water and not eating vegetables again can have complications of constipation. So what causes constipation has to be identified, and that has to be prevented, or that can cause complications. But to prevent that, what is good is against the other, vice versa. You have a good amount of water to make your stool soft. You have to have a good fiber diet to make it bulky and give you satisfaction of passing stools. Third is that you should have high fiber diet, for the form of green leafy vegetables or maybe fruits. So these things can cause a bulk. They can have a good fiber diet and makes easy motions possible. So I think that's something that you should increase in your diet to prevent having piles. And to avoid them, you have to have something which is causes constipation. So early absorption, less fiber, such type of diet is the one which is results into complications of piles.
Right. Thank you, sir. So, to add to this question, there is a very popular belief that you're eating very spicy food, you might land up with piles. Is that true, sir?
Not really, not really. It is not true that the spicy food per se can cause piles. But yes, if one has piles and a spicy food can induce complications, as I just told you, burning. Next day morning in the toilet seat, they have a lot of burning out there. That burning can induce inflammation. Inflammation can result into tear there and a bleeding and a complication chances of infection, inflammation, and bleeding. These are the chances which can increase. Generally, the spicy diet or spicy eaters who are there, uh, a bit of a non-vegetarian spicy preparations, and then they fill up their tummy so much with that they don't need anything, with a fiber or other things. So per se, spices don't result into piles, but yes, if you have piles, spices can put you into real trouble.
Thank you, sir. So, Nikita Singh is asking first, she's greeting you. Hi, doctor, how are you? She's asking, what is the best way to cure piles or anal fissures?
Best way to treat piles or anal fissure. Best way, as we just talked so much about the piles part of it, that we have to take a diet, if required, the medical management, if required, the treatment modality which you use about, or if required, a surgical intervention. Now, talking about the fissure, the second part of your question is that fissure and piles are two different conditions altogether. They can coexist, but yes, they are different conditions. What is fissure? Fissure is nothing else but a wound which is present at your lower end. Generally, this is secondary to the hard stools. Hard stools brush against that mucosa and cause a wound there. It can be acute wound or a chronic wound. Chronic wound is that it is gone beyond and is non-healing. So it's a continuous problem which is there. So every time a patient passes a bit of a hard stools, they get a lot of pain out there, and that's what exactly is the fissure. The fissures in acute phase, when they are not so complicated, can be treated medically with locally applying ointments which are there, which can induce some of the improve the bleeding, the blood supply to that part and healing of the wound. The weapon is basically a wound, so it has to heal by that way. And a smooth passage by use of laxatives. That's what is general treatment which is offered in case of acute piles. When it goes into the chronic phase, it just refuses to heal. In such cases, one may require intervention in the form of sphincterotomy or something like a bit of anal dilatation. Those things may be required in such patients for a permanent cure of the disease what they have, called as a chronic fissure in the lung. Or occasionally even in acute fissure you require surgical intervention depending on the severity of the disease.
Degree piles be cured without surgery?
No, no. Third degree piles cannot be. You see, any piles, as I was just telling you, cannot be cured. You don't land up in the problem. So, more the grade, more are the chances that you may land up with complication. So, grade 3 piles, you take medicines and maybe prolong the duration by which you will end up in complication. So that's the way it works. They cannot be cured, and no piles can even be cured except for the grade 1 piles can occasionally be cured with some of the lifestyle changes or medicines. But beyond that, 2, 3, 4, 5, no. Answer is big No.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot. There was a quite an informative and enlightening talk on this topic. So, also, sir, just wanted to ask you about the piles and hernia camp that we have organized at Nanavati Super Specialty Hospital. Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yes, yes, yes. I think this is it. As we are just talking about a very common surgical conditions. So, for the benefit of these patients, we thought that we should have our social responsibility towards the society. So, we thought that we will organize a free consultation camp for hernia and piles. So, those patients who think they have piles, they think that they have hernia, but they are not sure about it. So for them, this particular camp will be of great help and use. It's going to be on the Sunday, that's on 31st of January, from 9 to 1 p.m. And you got to register yourself, with the Nanavati Super Specialty Hospital. So you can call upon the Nanavati Hospital and ask for, registering for this camp with the marketing department which is there, which is going to be taking care about such registrations, things which are there. And there are certain numbers which you can call upon directly, maybe to get yourself registered for that. Because registration is mandatory for this camp, though the consultation is totally free. The number for such type of this particular camp registration is, write it down. Are you ready? Okay. So the number is going to be 7045450502. I'll repeat the number for you once again. So make corrections if you have missed it out. 70454 50502. So this is going to be the number where you can directly register yourself for this camp, and those and make your friends or your other social media. You can make other people aware about this camp as well, so that larger the number of patients can avail this particular facility of getting themselves rightly diagnosed, so that the treatment options are open in front of them, rather than sitting and wondering about what am I suffering or taking some treatment presumptive diagnosis. It's better to get diagnosed and then get treated for the same.
Right. Thanks a lot, sir. So, guys, I have also added the number in the chat. You can take the contact number from there. It's 7045450502. Quite easy to remember as well. So, I hope I'll see you guys at the camp, because you will get the benefit of the expertise of Dr. Kamath, his vast expertise, and it's free of cost. So it won't charge you anything, but you will get the benefit of his expertise, and for early detection of hernia and piles, of course. So thanks a lot, doctor, for coming here and spending your time to discuss this topic. And thanks a lot, the viewers, for tuning into the health chat. We'll see you next time with a different topic regarding your health.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to meet sitting some of you at least at on this 31st camp. Thank you so much for patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. Thank you.